And I'll call this meeting of the Champaign-Urbana Cable Commission to order at 3:31 on Thursday, October 16th. Would the clerk call the roll?
Yes. Chair Folk.
Present.
Commissioner Walker.
Here.
Commissioner Cinder.
Present.
Commissioner Rosales.
Here.
Commissioner Foster.
Here.
And I received notes from Commissioner Lukeman and the new Commissioner Wadsworth, and neither of them are able to attend today. And we have a quorum.
Excellent. Does anyone have any modifications to the agenda that they would like to propose?
Actually, I do. I neglected to remember that there was not a quorum last time, so there are actually 2 sets of minutes to be approved, and I've included both of them in your packet.
Okay, and the date for the previous was?
4/16/14.
Great. So that's added under the next item. Do I have a motion to add that under the next
I
item?
move we add the approval of the April minutes.
Second.
Any opposed? Or all in favor, I guess?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Nope. So that's added under 4. And that's the next item on the agenda. Did anyone have any comments on the minutes from the last 2 meetings? Do I hear a motion to approve those minutes?
So moved.
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Great. That also passes. That's both of the sets of minutes. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
And now moving on to correspondence. Did we have a significant amount of, or we have any correspondence to bring to our
Yes,
attention?
we have correspondence. Jeff has submitted the cable complaints from Champaign. There were none from Urbana in the past quarter. And I'll let Jeff talk about those. I have 2 additional ones. One is in your packet. There is a new Director for External Affairs for Central Illinois at AT&T U-verse. His name is Christopher Warwick. He works out of Springfield, evidently, and he did let us know that he would not be able to make the meeting, but requested a copy of the agenda. So I sent that to him along with the schedule of meetings. I also have communication from Urbana Legal Department in the form of Jim Simon, and he asked me to provide this to you. And this is quoting Jim: "The cities of Urbana and Champaign are in final negotiations with ITV3 concerning cable franchise and licensing agreements with the respective cities. Currently, ITV3 has an indefeasible right of use agreement with UC2B NFP concerning ITV3's access, use, operation, maintenance, and expansion of the UC2B fiber optic system. While no final language of agreement between the 2 cities and ITV3 has been agreed upon, the agreements, with one substantive exception, will contain language virtually identical to the Comcast cable franchise agreements which have been executed by the 2 cities. The one exception will be the build-out requirement for cable services. It is expected that the parties will agree that the methodology for building out a cable system will mirror the terms of agreement between UC2B NFP and ITV3 concerning ITV3's build-out of the fiber optic system for UC2B NFP." And again, that was from Jim Simon.
The cable complaints for the quarter, we had 12, which is a pretty substantial number. I don't really have an explanation as to why. They were kind of all over the place. A few rates, customer service, some phone issues. Some of them are kind of repeats that somebody would file a complaint and they'd file the same issue because their phone would stop working the next week or something like that. But there's really no rhyme or reason to why we had so many. So I guess I'm a little jealous of Jake with Urbana not having had any, but we were able to assist these 12 customers in Champaign, and got these issues resolved with the thanks of Art Simberski from Comcast. I do want to give him a shout out because some of these in here, we received the complaint, sent it to him in the morning, and we had the issue resolved by the afternoon, so that's just fantastic.
Bravo, Art. I'll just, on the topic of the AT&T representative, I hadn't had a chance to reach out to Art yet, but I reached out to the new AT&T representative and asked him to consider giving us an update on AT&T in the community at our next meeting, and he tentatively agreed to that. If nothing critical comes up on his schedule, then he'll be here next meeting to do that. Do the commissioners have anything they want to address with the correspondence? Moving on to the next item on the agenda, the unfinished business of the amendment of the commission rules and regs.
Jeff Hamilton and I met a couple of weeks ago, and after Jeff's very busy period with his new installation over in Champaign, and Jeff has identified in the Champaign City Code those instances where the name of the commission will need to be changed, need to be code changes. I also identified 42 pages in the Urbana City Code that will need to be addressed. The complicating factor is that while Champaign some time ago addressed the changes in state law that have preempted many of the commission's powers, that was never addressed in the Urbana Code. So the question right now is, are these separate issues to be addressed with code changes, or should they all be addressed at once? And the feeling is that if it's going to be that substantial of a code change, that the legal department really needs to be in charge of it. So I met with executive city staff this past week, basically to bring them up to speed on where we were. And I'm waiting to hear back as to, the preferences to how to deal with each of these issues. So that's where we stand.
Okay.
And from Champagne's standing, we did have that meeting and that discussion, and we're going to just wait on what Urbana's timeline's going to lead. Being as how they're the clerk for the commission, we're just going to follow their lead on that.
Sounds reasonable. So no action for now, and you guys are working internally, and maybe next meeting, but maybe not if it turns out to be a very substantial change.
Yeah, it's pretty much, it's up to legal at that point then. So.
Okay.
I have a recollection, perhaps faulty, that we had heard from legal from one or more of the cities regarding the name change. Does anyone recall that?
You may be referring to, there was, after the commission changed its name at the last meeting, or whichever one that was, I did update, city management on that. Our city attorney stated, well, the commission can't change its name. It's set by the city code for both cities, which he and I had the conversation. Yes, I've made the commission aware of that. So it's just a reminder that it's up to both Champaign and the Urbana City Councils to do a code amendment to change the name or not to. But both city staffs are working with our legal representatives to try to make that happen.
Thank you.
Great. Any other comments on that topic? Moving on to committee reports. We don't have any current committees that have done any work. That may be different next time, but so I guess we can move on to staff reports.
We've been busy. So I'll just sort of toss out a few things. We were able to, thanks to the volunteer producers of Aware on the Air, who relinquished their recording time to record the Stephen Saleta press conference on campus. It was on YouTube for 36 hours, and it had already had well over 7,000 views. So it's by far and away the most the greatest interest that's been shown in any of our productions. We were also we gave footage from the press conference for use on Democracy Now!, the national TV program, and they credited us on air with that footage. We've subsequently had volunteers record the Academic Freedom Forum that Dr. Frank came in from Columbia University to run here, and we've been airing that as well. And it's, we were the only broadcast outlet to provide complete coverage of the press conference from start to finish, so we felt really good about that. We went on to a lot of people's radar with it. We're back to broadcasting Urbana High School sports, soccer and football at the moment. Continuing production of Art Now, The Market Menu, Art at the Market. We have a new monthly show called It's All About You, which details various activities in the various city departments. We've done a number of PSAs with the fire department, features on the Olympian Drive groundbreaking. Jason produced a 15-minute piece on the 50th anniversary of the CU Urbanized Area Transportation Study. Features on the Walk and Roll to School Day last week, on the new Legacy Tree program that City of Urbana has been doing. We added frequent airings of our Sharing the Road and Safe Routes to Schools programs for new residents in August and September. We had a program that was originally to have been recorded here, but wound up being recorded in Champaign Chamber Councils, called Council of the Lords, which was a television program written by Dr. Reverend Eugene Barnes. Really interesting, great production. So we've been airing that. We have returned WPGU's Illini Drive Sports Talk Show to the air with the new season for them. We had member productions featuring both the Champaign-Urbana Labor Day Parade and the Westville Labor Day Parade. We have a new program called The First Amendment by producer Frederick Douglass Dixon, who has a long history with CAN TV, one of the PEG stations in the Chicago area, with his father up there, and he is now attending the University of Illinois in a PhD program and is producing a new program that's on Saturday afternoons. We're also running a new program from Washington, D.C. called Girls Talk TV, which is empowering girls and young women, particularly in the African-American community. And we're doing some landscape recycling center promotional and educational spots and whatever else we can get our teeth into. So.
That's tough to follow. That's a pretty substantial list. That's impressive. While CGTV hasn't been nearly that active on the production realm, we are happy to report we are now an HD channel. We did a project starting, the installation started in mid-August. We're still finishing things up. We're not quite there yet, but we're a 1080i HD broadcast facility. We added an extra camera, council chambers, a few monitors. We took the opportunity to revamp council chambers with paint and tiles and tables, and there's some chairs coming, that kind of stuff. But the broadcast equipment is, I was just sharing with the guys before the meeting that it's, if you sit in the control room or if you attend in council chambers, it's very crisp, it's very clear, and it's HD like we all know and love. And if you watch our live stream on our website, you can see that in HD. If you watch it on UVerse or Comcast, unfortunately, that's standard definition. So we lose quite a bit of clarity as we have to convert it down before we send it out to those channels. So that's a little disappointing when you're sitting in the control room and you look over your shoulder just to see how it looks on the air, and it's not nearly as good as what you're seeing in front of you. But check out the live stream because that is in HD, and we are still working a few of the bugs out, but it's quite impressive, and we'll have to have you guys over there for a meeting sometime so we can show it off maybe. As we move to widescreen HD productions, that involved scrapping everything we had done before as far as graphics and graphic design, the bulletin boards, our bumpers, the little PSAs, those kinds of things. So Janet, our multimedia producer, has been very busy. Got started before the project in the middle of the summer, started creating those new widescreen graphics in an HD quality. So that when we did flipped the switch, so to speak. We had some content and we had some graphics for the meetings and stuff, so that's working really well. The Council of the Lords, Jake talked about, was something we had filmed. We've done some work with the Muhammad Aquifer issue. We'll go film some of those press conferences and or events that are held like at the Library for Community Education. And we also partnered again this year with Urbana Public Television and filmed the Champaign-Urbana International Humanitarian Awards in September. And we're currently working on the edit of that. Once that's done, it'll be running on both channels as well. So again, it's a good partnership opportunity to have the two channels work together. We do that a couple times a year, and we're happy to have the teamwork to make that happen.
Sounds like you've been quite busy.
Yeah.
Regarding the HD stuff, are the recordings that you have available for later viewing, are they also in HD?
Yes, so all of our recordings are HD. So the stuff that's on our video server that we replay, if you're watching on the stream, those would be HD. And then we convert them to be on the website because they're huge files, but they are still HD quality. So the video on demand, if you want to check one from the spring versus one from the last week, you can see the difference.
Cool. That's exciting. It'll be fun to watch the outside world catch up with your technology instead of the other way around. Guess it's a bit of an arms race. Did either of you prepare station clips, reels that you wanted to play?
Chris also has a report.
Oh, Chris, sorry. Yes.
Oh, trying to even think. We've just been really busy over at PCTV. I didn't come to the previous meeting, so we did our annual Parkland Challenge High School Quiz Bowl tournament. Had 16 high schools come in, so we do that every year. It's always a good event, and so we had them battle off. I think we ended up having 15 matches, so that aired over the summer. We are looking at some new equipment as well. We're not HD. We do have some HD equipment at our facility, but we don't broadcast in HD. But we are going to be getting a TriCaster, so we're looking to integrate that into our system. So that'll be exciting. We don't have any type of portable. The portable live production equipment that we had in the past was not very good, and we've used it for some soccer and basketball games over at Parkland. But this will greatly help those productions. Besides that, just kind of business as usual, doing our standard talk show, Parkland Report. We produce a couple of those a month for art's sake, our show in the art gallery. So just kind of business as usual.
Cool. Is our next meeting after your break is over? Do you know? It's probably the 16th, or I think
It's January 15th.
January 15th.
Yeah, it'll be about right when the spring semester is beginning at Parkland.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you think you'll be here in town at that time?
I should be, just in regards to if I'm teaching a class and what time it's
see.
scheduled for.
Okay. Well,
That's-
hopefully we'll have you the next one too. Great. Operator reports. We don't have an operator report. We don't have either of our operators in the house right now. And as I said, hopefully we'll get an operator report at least from AT&T next time. And I'll reach out to Art as well and see if he'd like to do it next time or the time after that, if that would be better for him. And moving on to new business. So I'd heard about the franchise from Jake a couple weeks ago at the UPTV Commission, and so I wanted to put an item on here to discuss that a little bit and potentially appoint a member or two to follow that issue more closely and do anything that needs to be done so that we don't have to have a quorum to do whatever we need there. So I guess I would ask I was going to ask Jake or Jeff to give a little bit of background on what it means for the community that they are applying for a franchise. I can do it if you guys aren't comfortable doing it, but
To be honest, the first I learned about the possibility of a franchise with ITV3 was when the agenda came out.
Okay.
So I actually don't have any information on Champagne's part to provide to you.
And the only information I have is what Jim Simon gave me that I presented earlier, so.
And Jim Simon represents the city of Champaign?
He's the city attorney for Urbana.
Urbana, okay. And so from the sound of that correspondence, I gathered that the city of Urbana was not looking for any input from the Cable Commission. Is that your understanding?
Well, it doesn't specifically mention anything.
Right.
So I spoke with the city attorney for Champaign earlier today on that topic, and my takeaway was that no, they're not specifically asking us to do anything. I'm a little confused on the legal issues involved, but it sounds like to a large extent the agreement is constrained by legal things on all sides. So it can't deviate much in one direction or in any other direction because there are either laws or contracts that lock it into a pretty narrow window. That said, I mean, it doesn't require, that doesn't prevent us from commenting on it if we want to.
Sure.
But it does mean that any comment that we make will likely be, just an advisory. It won't. The contracts themselves sounded like there isn't much wiggle room.
Yep. And any comment we might make would basically be an unsolicited comment to the cities.
Correct, though I would say that we really should be making more comments, solicited or otherwise. That's our job, and the reason I think they don't turn to us is that we haven't done that very well in the past. So that said, no, it doesn't sound like they're looking for us to. In the past, the commission has done, for example, a needs assessment to collect positions from the community. The cities aren't asking us to do that, and I don't think it's something that we're required to do in any way. I thought that there was required to be a public hearing that we had conducted in the past. Jim didn't think that was the case, so either it is or isn't, but if there is a public hearing required, it sounds like they're not specifically looking for us to run it.
Okay.
Could you maybe give us, I'm not familiar with it at all. I don't know if
Oh,
it was
okay.
mentioned in the last meeting, just a summary of who they are and what they want to do?
Sure. So the sort of 10,000-foot view of what's going on is the cities created the UC2B network, a fiber backbone throughout the communities, and then they spun it off as a not-for-profit entity. That not-for-profit entity hired or contracted with a company called ITV3 to operate and expand that fiber infrastructure. ITV3 wants to offer video, and for that they're required to have a video franchise to offer video in our community. And so they are pursuing that. Once they offer video, they will be, once they have the franchise, they will be allowed to offer video, and the franchise will say under broadly the terms that they can do that, but again, because of some legal details, it basically will end up being exactly what Comcast can do, with the difference that there will be a different build-out requirement. So the build-out requirement for Comcast, if I recall, was 100%. It was required to be that if you were in the communities, they were required to provide you service. The ITV3 proposal, I believe, is that if you're in the communities and your neighborhood has over 50% of its residents who have expressed interest in their service, then they are required to provide you service within a certain time frame. So that's as far as I understand the basic gist of it. The uptake for consumers is that they will have access. Some areas will have access to another video provider, just like now some areas have access to AT&T as a video provider, though through a different legal mechanism, a local franchise instead of AT&T as a state franchise. Does that help at all?
When you say video, are you talking about a full channel lineup?
Yes.
Just like Comcast?
Yes.
So I'm assuming obviously this includes the PEG channels. So it's probably maybe early on as there are discussions about equipment needed for us to be able to send our signal to them and to get on their network.
We haven't heard any negotiations or any discussions about that at all. Like I said, this just came on my radar this week. But, you know, in the gist of it is the state's level playing field law would require essentially Comcast and other franchisees having virtually the same franchise, just like Chair Folk mentioned. So in that franchise, it says that they have to provide PEG channels. So I would assume that since that wasn't an exception in the note from the city attorney for Urbana, that must be one of the things that would be included. Again, that's just an assumption on my part since it wasn't an exclusion that he mentioned. But no specifics about equipment or opportunities have been brought to my attention.
This would include the provision of high-speed fiber optic internet as well as phone service as optional services.
Though not technically under the franchise.
Not under the franchise, but as part of the build-out. Once the franchise is in place, if you wanted to purchase television, you could also purchase internet and phone service or any combination thereof. And in exploring ITV3's website, my understanding from their website is at the present time, they not only require that a community express or a neighborhood express 50% interest, but that 50% sign contracts agreeing to some period of time buy the service once it becomes available.
I wasn't aware of the details of that.
Yeah, that's the way I read their website.
That was going to be my question, and I was wondering where it was going to fit in, and I know that Jake had requested items to be placed on the agenda, but I think if I'm confused and I'm on the commission, I could imagine how our viewing audience would feel when we spend a lot of money, a lot of time, and on the use of public ways to set in a whole fiber system, and then what has become the status of that? I noticed that, Jeff, you indicated that CUB2 board meetings are no longer being televised. Was that the board that was responsible in updating what the current status of that build-out was in the city of Champaign, in the city of Urbana, and at the University of Illinois?
Yeah, let me try to address that. So UC2B was the entity that received the federal grant to install the fiber network in our communities. It was an intergovernmental consortium made up of several entities, but the leads were the University of Illinois, the cities of Champaign and Urbana. And the city of Champaign was the lead on that. So those meetings were open meetings, as required. Because they were held in Champaign, we went ahead and televised them and whatnot. At some point in that process, after I believe it was after the infrastructure was in the ground and the grant had kind of wrapped up, the intergovernmental agreement was modified so that it became a not-for-profit. So when Mr. Simon's statement referred to UC2B NFP, that'd be UC2B not-for-profit, which was basically the second coming of UC2B. It was that not-for-profit. Once it became a not-for-profit, it was no longer a government body and subject to those Open Meetings Act requirements. It wasn't televised. It wasn't even held in Champaign any longer, in Champaign's council chambers any longer at that point. To be honest, I'm not sure what the status of that not-for-profit is. I'm pretty certain that there is a board, but as to when they meet and where, I don't have that information.
No, go ahead, I'm sorry.
I can just briefly address that. They do still meet, and they are still open, though I don't think they are legally required to be open. They're open to the public. They meet at the, I think it's the Champaign Parking Building. Is that where their office is?
Yes, that could be.
Okay, so the Champaign Parking Building, which is on maybe Hagen or just off Hagen in Champaign, on the last Tuesday of the month, even if it's the last day of the month. So even if there are 5 Tuesdays in the month, the last Tuesday of the month at 8:30 a.m. So any public members who want to can come by
So
that meeting.
again, for clarity and clarity's sake, I thought that this was a project that the federal government was sponsoring for local communities and underserved communities so that they could have the latest high-speed internet access. And then there was going to be a build-out from those hubs to individual houses at a cost approximately of the distance between the individual house to the hub where that was going to be connected. That is no longer in play? Is that what you're indicating, that this non-for-profit organization, once they get 50% signed contracts, will be able to begin that build-out from those hubs? And is anybody using or utilizing those hubs? Because I also thought that those hubs were going to be used by the cities, by the schools, by the local first responders,
Sure.
the fire, police. Is that not happening now?
Well, no, it is still happening. Let me try to address that, realizing that I haven't been actively involved with UC2B for several years. But so please jump in, Sheriff Folk. I know you keep tabs on this. But to try to summarize it, UC2B's mission when it was installed was kind of a twofold part. One was to create fiber rings throughout the communities to connect and facilitate the connection of government agencies, schools, nursing homes, boys and girls clubs, some houses of worship, things like that. Another significant part of that project also included fiber to the home in those areas, those census block areas that have been identified as being underserved by the federal measurements. The federal grant that the cities and the University of Illinois facilitated putting together and then implementing did all of that. They did build the fiber rings. I can tell you the city of Champaign, all of our facilities are on dark fiber. Well, it's lit fiber now. We own those fiber. The schools are on the fiber. The health clinics, that's all in place. They did build it out in the neighborhoods that they that had been identified as underserved, both in Champaign and Urbana, and they hooked up subscribers at a low rate to try to bridge that digital divide. Once it became once the grant funds were spent and that was gone, those funds had been used up, and UCD became a not-for-profit. That's when they started to seek, through an open process, partners to help build out to the rest of the community. So while they did certain neighborhoods in town, the grant money wasn't there to build out the entire community. So they were looking for private partners that would use that backbone that was installed to try to build out to the rest of the communities. And that not-for-profit, as I understand it, then did enter into a contract with ITV3, which is a private for-profit company, to continue that effort to try to build out the network to the rest of the community based upon the interest and the ability of residents to say, yes, my neighbors and I have gotten together and we've got enough signatures, and we want to prove to you that we want you to build in our community.
So if I back up just a little bit and be patient, in order to get that $80 million grant to establish the fiber optics and get that money to do that, I believe that there had to be an intergovernmental agreement that would pick up the 20% of the cost of that, I believe.
I don't remember how much the grant was for, but yes, there was.
I know
There was a certain
high-
percentage
it was a high
that
amount,
there was a local match, and I know that the state of Illinois also contributed a significant portion of that local match.
So that local match was matched in order to get the grant, and it was spent?
To the best of my knowledge, realizing that I'm not actively involved, nor was I on UCTB's
Okay,
board.
because and then what I'm sort of trying to piece together is that if we met our obligation, it's still a public entity, that it belongs to the people because it uses the people's right-of-way on the streets of Champaign and Urbana, and as cable and AT&T, we would tend to tax a certain percentage of their fees so that we could continue to either expand our local public access television or go ahead and build a public access production studio. And I know that cable for the city of Champaign, it was nearly almost $500,000 of interest that we would get from that company, which it gets morphed into the city of Champaign. It doesn't get morphed in specifically for the IT component. And I know that Urbana basically kicks it back into the IT production for the people of Urbana and the citizens of Urbana. So my whole thing is that I get the feeling that somewhere along this process, it was a bait and switch for a non-for-profit company that now it was in good intentions to provide services to these underserved communities, which right now they've spun it so widely and people have lost contact with what's happening that if anybody up in the north end wanted to go ahead and connect fiber, who do they call? And what I would like to see done is hopefully, and maybe at one of our next meetings, have somebody from ITB3 to come in to explain what is their request. I didn't know about the 50%. I didn't know that it had to be 50% signed contracts versus 50% interest. So there's a lot of information that we could use this commission for to get the word out for the citizens that are totally lost in the blind. I know that everywhere I turned, there were fibers being put in to many parts of the city. So I was just kind of concerned that we have lost the interest of the people into this mega $1 million project that we have gotten zero out of, other than the municipalities and the schools, which was one of our original intent, but it was also to provide the citizens an opportunity to have high-speed internet.
Can I jump in? So, first of all, with regard to the taxing, that will be covered by the franchise because they'll be the same as Comcast in that regard. So,
And that's the item where we were appointing both staffers to the franchise committee so
No,
that they
we-
could look at the interest?
I think we are not yet at that point, and I wasn't proposing to appoint them. I was just asking them
Oh,
for an
okay.
update from their
That's
relevant
item number
perspective.
8A, right?
That's what we're on right now.
Okay.
Yeah. So just a few of the things I wanted to clarify to make sure that we are giving as much information as we have, which is not complete at this point.
Okay.
With regard to the taxes and the revenues, they, as far as I know, will be treated exactly the same as Comcast in that regard. So there will be a 5%, is it?
Yes, that's
Yeah.
right. There's a 5% cable franchise fee in both cities.
And when did that begin?
Well, Urbana's had it for the decades, and Champaign increased it from 3 to 5% approximately 5 years ago.
No, I meant to ask when did this new entity, non-for-profit, begin to take ownership of it? And does it begin from that point? Because if we're providing already those services, I would imagine that tax kicks in as soon as it changes hands.
It's specifically the video services which they cannot offer until they have a franchise, so that are covered by that franchise fee, the 5% fee. So until they have a franchise, they won't be allowed to offer video services, and once they are offering those video services, then they will be subject to that fee. But no one is currently offering those services over that network, and so there is no related fee.
So there's no citizens, individual citizens that are receiving any of the benefits?
The individual citizens are currently getting internet service. They're paying for internet service
they're
from ITV3. And the not-for-profit entities that Jeff talked about are also, they have internet service, but it's a for-pay service. It's a low-cost service, but they are paying.
And when did that service start?
2 years ago, roughly.
2 years.
Yeah.
So they've been receiving funding from individual citizens for the last 2 years.
The not-for-profit has been, and then this summer, when they made the contract with ITV3, it's, I guess, slowly transitioned to now it's just ITV3.
And ITV3, is that a governmental agency or private entity?
Again, I'm not an expert on the UCTB thing, so I really think that the commission should engage with the UCTB not-for-profit and the ITV3 for exact answers, but it is my understanding that ITV3 is a private for-profit company.
Might as well. So the reason for all of these questions, I've run into them in many cases, and I don't have answers to all of them. And because of because of the business that I own, I'm concerned about either a potential conflict of interest or an appearance of conflict of interest. So I don't really want to be the one who's in charge of investigating or finding answers and keeping the community informed. And that's why I wanted to see about the possibility of having a subcommittee that will look at these issues, make sure that we do keep the public informed. And it may be ITV3. There may be additional franchisees in the coming months and years. I don't know. And each of those will involve a set of questions that need to be answered by us to keep the community informed. That's our job.
I would like to propose to the chair that we set up either a study session so we could discuss this publicly and let the public know, or if not, have it as an agenda item and invite the chair or the individuals representing this entity so that they could explain it at least to me and the board, as well as the constituents that are out there that may be interested in the high speed, because I thought I was excited. I said, oh, high speed, my God, because sometimes AT&T goes off and we get the frozen screens or we get no channel whatsoever. So it is highly unreliable, but it's a little bit more reliable, and that's a personal preference than cable, which I had before. And I was user of both, and I keep going back from one to the other, and I've switched back from AT&T to cable and from cable back to AT&T, and I'm still not totally 100% satisfied with either. And I thought that this would be a total new thing that I could, maybe with a little bit of money and the influence of other citizens within my area or district, I could, have maybe a good turnout that we could plug into the high-speed internet and have uninterrupted high-speed television and internet access and downloads. Netflix, I mean, it takes a while for that little wheel to spin and spin and spin, and I'm wondering, and then it goes off because time has lapsed, and then I have to find it again, and it's very frustrating. So that's what I would like to have, at least, so that this commission could at least be useful for the citizens to provide them updated information. I think what we do now is we meet 4 times a year, and the information we cover, this meeting is almost over. It's very small in comparison to what I think the potentials of this commission could be. Thank you.
I should also point out that all the information I've shared today has been solely by Googling ITV3 Champaign-Urbana and looking at the links provided that way, which goes to the ITV3 website. And they have a little block in one corner about their hopes to provide service in Champaign-Urbana.
And they were the only competitors that bidded for it or wrote up proposals to acquire that opportunity?
As I understand it from the representation on the ITV3 website, they have entered into a partnership with the nonprofit company.
I would suggest that you have a lot of great questions, and perhaps you would be interested in being a member of or chairing a subcommittee
Out
on
of the
that
many
topic.
committees I am, I want some answers, sure, I would love to be on it. Because my last question would be, is it an open, fair bidding process? You know, could we put it out there just like I think we were going to put out several bids for new cable providers, I believe at one time, where, you know, if we weren't satisfied with, you know, what we had insight, that we could open it up for, you know, other companies to come in and give us a better deal. And I think that's every 10 years, I believe, right? That contract expires every 10?
Yes, in reference to the Comcast cable franchise agreement, the last one signed is a 10-year agreement. It's a non-exclusive agreement, which is why other entities like ITV3 are able to provide services in our community. I did want to also provide a clarifying note to your comment about an open process on this. UC2B, not-for-profit, did have an open process where they invited invitations, proposals, I should say, from companies to provide the services that they were requesting. I wasn't privy to those proposals, but they did have that open process where they invited people to make proposals, and ITV3 was apparently provided the best proposal that they decided to negotiate with.
And again, you probably would know, but is that negotiable every 10 years, every 5 years, or?
I'm afraid I don't know the terms of that contract.
Okay. But definitely, include me in that.
All right, so it sounds like we have one. Are there
I
any other?
have a real quick question too about, and Geraldo may want to consider this. 2 or 3 years ago, if this is related at all, there was a group in here that had, it might have been Google or some other agency that was making an offer for high-speed fiber, and they were asking people not just to pledge money, but to put down money to show serious interest. And I saw a big splash about it, and then nothing. Are they gone? Was that related to this?
That is related. That was UC2B, and many of the people who have pledged money still have that money pledged in a bank account, I believe somewhere at one of the banks in town, waiting for that build-out to happen under ITV3.
Ah, okay.
So, but
This gets more and more complicated.
there
doesn't it?
are many nuances.
I have one, and I apologize, it may not be able to be answered because I understand not everybody, but one question. Of the grant money that they received in the original plan that UC2B had, did they reach their goal of where they wanted to build out to underneath the grant money that they had, or did they run out before they reached that point?
I mean,
Does that make sense?
They built, as far as I am aware, all of the infrastructure that the grant said that they were supposed to build.
Okay.
They didn't, I think, quite reach the number of signups that they had wanted.
Okay. Thank you.
Chair,
Mhm.
if I can just interject, Jake had requested that, because I've worked as the clerk for the commission before, should the commission decide to establish a committee, which is what you're discussing, certain regulations from your rules and regulations will apply to that committee, and he asked that I just kind of summarize that for you, which would include things that, should you decide to establish a committee, that the process would be that the chair would provide names to the commission, which the commission would then take action vote on to appoint basically members to the committee. A seated member of the Cable Commission is required to chair that committee. The meetings of the committee are subject to all the same rules and regulations that this body is. The Open Meetings Act, agendas, minutes, those types of things.
So the biggest challenge there, it seems to me, is that if we want people other than the people here that can volunteer to be on that committee. I don't have those names right now, so I can't propose them to you. If the commission wants to create that committee, I would suggest that we create it with the members that we have at hand. And if there are additional ones, then we can try and have a special meeting to add those to the committee. At that
I
time.
would propose that maybe we try to find out more about ITV3 first, or have them at a meeting to, or whatever we can do to discuss and talk about it more before we maybe form the committee, because that way, then maybe after we know more information, then we'll have a better idea of whether we need to form it.
Mhm.
So that would mean at our January meeting?
I would think a special meeting before then, fairly soon, to hear from representatives of ITV.
Again, just one commissioner, my concern is that it's hard to get a quorum
Yes.
in general. And one of the reasons for doing this as a subcommittee was to allow the members that are interested to engage directly with the people that they need to engage with and find that information, and then be able to present that information to the commission at one of our regular meetings. So my one vote would be, instead of having that responsibility fall back again on the full commission, we establish the subcommittee and have it be their job to do that investigation, so that they can have that report to the commission.
I would second what Chris had indicated, that perhaps we ought to invite this group and give us an overview, and then maybe we could ask certain questions and look at our constituents and see what questions they would like to see this group answered, and then after they answer them, and then if we feel a need to go ahead and create a subcommittee that will report directly to this board or this commission, and then we could move forward with that.
Well, we could at least see if one of the representatives was available for a regular January meeting, and if not, then go from there.
I have some concerns about timing issues here. From the letter from Jim Simon that Jake read, it sounded to me like, well, I recall the phrase "last stages of negotiation" was in that reading, and so that would indicate to me that the potential exists that a contract may be signed before our next meeting. So I think there would be some need for some quick action on our part if we wish to be involved.
So what I've heard is a motion and a second, more or less, to invite them to a meeting of the Cable Commission, and separately a suggestion that that be a special meeting instead of a regularly scheduled meeting, and separately from that, that it be the regularly scheduled meeting. Could I get?
One more question. When is that contract supposed to be signed or supposed to be firmed up? You don't know? Or
We
this
don't.
year, next year?
This year.
This year?
This year.
The end of this year, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a friendly amendment, I would accept that, sure.
I can make a motion that we have a special meeting where we invite ITV3 here to discuss the current status of the franchise.
Okay.
May I make a friendly suggestion that you might also consider inviting UCTB NFP, which is a separate entity?
FP?
NFP, not-for-profit.
Oh.
Yeah,
Oh.
that would be good. I was thinking that, but I wasn't sure if that was within our realm, since they're not, UCTB isn't coming into any type of franchise with the cities. I didn't know if that was something that,
I think your motion was to invite them.
right, sure.
Yep.
Yep. So I could make a motion to invite UCTB, NFP, and ITV3 here for a special meeting to discuss the current status and franchise issues.
Okay. And what is normal? Do we set the time of that meeting in this, like here and now, or can we do that at a later date?
I would recommend that just by your motion, and should the motion pass, that you just give staff direction to try to make those contacts and work with the chair to schedule that meeting. I don't think you have to set a date now and then you find out that who you want to invite can't come, and then you're looking at another meeting to try and set another date. I think you can leave that open-ended in your motion.
Okay.
Because we'll have to arrange a time that is convenient and acceptable to both entities.
Okay, so we had a motion, we had an amendment, we had a motion, we had a second, we had an amendment. Do we have a second for the amendment?
Second.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Motion
Great.
passed.
So we will set that, so that's direction to staff to try and set that meeting. We do not have any audience participation because we don't have an audience, except the viewing audience who can participate by sending your letters and so forth, or showing up at a future meeting. Are there any comments from any of the commissioners at this time?
I had one comment. Do we have a full board currently?
We are, as last I heard, absent one member from Champaign.
And are we at minimum or maximum capacity on the board? I believe there was
There's-
an odd number range.
There's
right?
one open seat, to the best of my knowledge, and that is a Champaign seat.
And right now, I think we don't have a range. That was part of the rules and regs change that has not yet happened, right?
We don't have a range of,
Yeah, city code establishes how many members are on the
Specifically.
Right,
cable
yeah.
commission. City code has not been amended.
And what
I-
the number is, 7 or 5?
8.
Kind of depends on which code you read, actually.
Yeah, that's right. I think.
Champaign has one less member in its code than Urbana's does, but that's something we're hoping to clean up.
I think it's 10.
10?
I think it's 10.
8?
Because if at least counting all the PEG people who I believe are on the commission. No?
There's currently 7 members, and there's an open seat for Champaign, and Champaign has ceased to add a council seat.
Correct. When I referenced that we had a different number in our code, it was because a few years ago, a city council member from both cities is supposed to be on the cable commission. That hasn't happened for quite some time. So we eliminated that from the membership in the Champaign City Code. That still exists in the Urbana City Code. So if you want to be technical, and Jake can jump in here, but I suppose that means that Urbana has an open seat, which would be a council member seat?
Yeah.
And all city council members are welcome to come and sit on the commission according to the code, if I recall. So to that extent, it can be up to 14 plus
Okay.
additional members.
Okay.
But for the most part, we are missing one seat. So if you have anybody,
Okay.
if anyone out there would like to be a member of the Cable Commission and is a resident of Champaign, they should definitely
Contact the Champaign Mayor's office.
contact the Champaign Mayor's office or go to the Cable Commission website by searching for something like Champaign-Urbana Cable Commission, and there's a link for the form on that site. Okay.
Thank you.
Are there any other commissioners' comments?
Great job, Peter.
Wow, I got a compliment. Our next regularly scheduled meeting is January 15th, 2015 at 3:30 p.m. in the Urbana City Council chambers. It sounds like we will have a special session at some point in the near future. So if you would like to be informed about the time of that meeting, you can either check your regular official meeting posting locations or email the commission staff with their address on the Cable Commission website and, or any commissioner, and we'll keep you informed about when that meeting is. Okay, and do I hear a motion to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor?
Hi.
Aye.
All opposed?
Great.
Great.
Good job.